Imagine a nation's very being, its sovereign borders, the integrity of its elections, the economic trust in its currency constantly under a legal microscope. How do laws, evolve to protect these fundamental pillars? Today, we're embarking on a crucial journey, a deep dive into the very fabric of India's newly enshrined penal code. Welcome to the deep dive. Our focus today is the Bhartiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, or BNS 2023, specifically sections 147 through 188. This isn't just a legal update, it's a profound exploration into how India's new code safeguards the state, its institutions, and its economic stability. Think of it as peeling back the layers to understand the legal fortifications essential for any modern nation.
And for you, our engaged learner, this deep dive is more than an academic exercise. It's about gaining a robust understanding of the bedrock principles that protect India's sovereignty, maintain internal order, ensure fair democratic processes, and underpin its economic health. We'll be dissecting complex legal provisions, offering context, real-world implications, and drawing on established legal wisdom to make these vital concepts truly accessible. This is your comprehensive shortcut to being exceptionally well-informed on a cornerstone of Indian law.
That's right. The BNS 2023 represents a monumental legislative overhaul, moving past centuries-old statutes. But while new, many of its underlying principles draw deeply from India's rich legal history, particularly from the repealed Indian Penal Code. We'll be leveraging that extensive jurisprudence, those established legal precedents, to illuminate the spirit and intent behind these new sections, showing how they build on and, refine the past. Today, our exploration will span 5 critical areas. First, we'll confront the most grave offenses against the state's existence itself.
The most serious ones.
Then, we'll examine offenses concerning foreign states and state prisoners, highlighting India's international obligations and internal security.
Right, the external dimension.
Following that, we'll delve into critical offenses related to the Army, Navy, and Air Force, crucial for national defense.
Absolutely vital.
Our 4th segment will focus on safeguarding the integrity of elections, the very heartbeat of our democracy.
Yes, fundamental.
And finally, we'll conclude by exploring provisions protecting the nation's currency, coinage, and stamps essential for economic trust. It's an intricate legal landscape we're about to explore, so let's pull back the curtain and begin with the most serious challenges any state can face, threats to its very existence.
Okay, so we commence our deep dive with Chapter 7 of the BNS, aptly titled Offenses Against the State. These are, without hyperbole, the most grievous offenses in any penal code. They are not merely crimes against individuals or property. They are direct assaults on the sovereign authority, constitutional framework, and territorial integrity of the nation itself. Such acts threaten to unravel the very fabric of governance.
And leading this chapter, as one might expect, is Section 147. Waging or attempting to wage war or abetting waging of war against the government of India. This sounds incredibly serious. What's at its core?
At its core, Section 147 criminalizes the ultimate act of aggression, waging war against the Indian state. This isn't about mere public disorder or a riot. It's an organized, armed, and, sustained challenge to the established government, aiming for its overthrow or subversion through force. The law's paramount objective here is nothing less than protecting India's sovereignty, its integrity, and its fundamental security from such existential threats. These gravest of penalties, death or life imprisonment, they're not merely punitive. They reflect the state's historical and philosophical stance that an attack on its very existence is the ultimate betrayal of allegiance, a principle deeply rooted in legal traditions globally.
So it's about safeguarding the nation at its most vulnerable point. And the section seems quite broad in its application. It applies to whoever, meaning anyone can be accused. It covers 3 distinct but related actions. Actually waging war, attempting to wage war, or abetting, which encompasses instigating, conspiring for, or intentionally aiding the waging of such war.
That's right.
The target is explicitly the government of India, broadly referring to the nation's sovereign authority. It seems the intent to challenge the state's authority is almost inherent in the very nature of waging war.
Precisely. This section encapsulates treason in its most direct and perilous forms, covering everything from the initial planning stages through attempted execution to direct participation. Think of an organized armed rebellion targeting key government installations with the stated aim of seizing power. That's waging war.
Okay.
Or consider a scenario where an individual is apprehended leading a well-equipped contingent towards the capital with clear intent to engage in hostilities to overthrow the government. That's an attempt. And if someone provides substantial financial backing, arms, or critical strategic intelligence to an organization actively engaged in such conflict, well, they're abetting it.
Those are chilling examples. And from a legal standpoint, how do courts typically distinguish waging war from other forms of violent protest?
That's a crucial distinction, as the Supreme Court has clarified. In landmark cases, like State, NCT of Delhi v. Navjot Sandhu, waging war implies an organized, sustained effort with a clear political purpose to overthrow or subvert the government. It's distinct from mere public disorder or localized rioting. It's an insurrection, not just a spontaneous disturbance.
Okay, so the organization and purpose are key.
Exactly. The scale isn't necessarily about numbers. Even a few individuals can commit this offense if their actions and intent are definitively directed at challenging state authority. For attempts or abetment, overt acts demonstrating that intent must be proven. This is the ultimate breach of allegiance to the state, justified by the fundamental principles of sovereignty and state security.
So, if direct armed conflict is Section 147, what about just the plotting, the initial agreements? How does the law intervene there at the earliest seeds of such an attack?
That's precisely where Section 148, conspiracy to commit offenses punishable that Section 147 comes in. Its core concept is to criminalize the agreement itself to commit acts as grave as waging war or to intimidate the government by force. This is what we call an inchoate or planning stage offense. The law recognizes the profound danger of such plots, even before any overt acts occur. The object here is early intervention, to enable the state to neutralize these treasonous designs at their very inception, because the mere formation of such an agreement poses an inherent and immediate threat to national security.
And what's particularly striking about this section is its extraterritorial reach. The conspiracy can occur within or without and beyond India, a critical feature in our interconnected world where threats often transcend physical borders. It outlines two types of conspiracy. First, to commit any offense under Section 147.
Waging war, attempt, or abetment.
Right. And second, to overawe the central or any state government by criminal force or the show of criminal force. Critically, the explanation states that no overt act is necessary. The agreement alone constitutes the offense. This is a fundamental distinction in conspiracy law, isn't it? Where the danger is seen as inherent in the illicit pact itself.
Exactly. It's a substantive offense punishing the mental stage of planning. The extraterritoriality acknowledges that national security threats are no longer confined to geographical boundaries. The overall clause is also particularly important, covering conspiracies aimed at intimidating or coercing the government through force, even if the ultimate goal isn't full-scale war. Punishments reflect this severity, ranging from life imprisonment to 10 years, plus a fine.
To paint a clearer picture, imagine a group of individuals, some residing in India and others abroad, communicating through encrypted channels to coordinate attacks on government infrastructure, aiming to destabilize the nation. Even if those attacks are thwarted or never come to fruition, the agreement itself can constitute an offense under Section 148.
That's correct. The agreement is the crime here.
Or consider a scenario where several persons meet and explicitly agree to use armed force to compel a state government to release specific prisoners. That agreement alone, without any physical action, could constitute a conspiracy to overawe the state government.
The legal principles here are rooted in preventing threats to state security and public order. Proof of agreement, the cornerstone of conspiracy, is often established through circumstantial evidence, inferred from the conduct of the alleged conspirators, as exemplified in cases like Navjot Sandhu. Knowledge of the common unlawful object is key, but not necessarily of all the intricate details or every single conspirator involved. Overawe implies creating a sense of fear or terror sufficient to influence government action.
So we've covered waging war and conspiring to do so. But what if someone is actively collecting the resources, getting ready for it? That's where Section 149 steps in, penalizing specific acts of preparation.
This section targets preparatory acts for waging war, but only when coupled with the direct intent to wage or be prepared for such war. The core concept is to neutralize threats before actual hostilities commence. This allows the state to intervene at an earlier critical stage, preventing a nascent threat from escalating into open conflict, which is vital for national security.
The legal ingredients here are quite precise. It targets whoever engages in the physical act of collecting men, arms, or ammunition, or otherwise prepares to wage war.
Right, the actus reus.
But crucially, this actus reus must be accompanied by a specific mens rea, the explicit intent of either waging or being prepared to wage war against the government of India.
Indeed. This is a rare and significant exception to the general rule that mere preparation is not punishable. For offenses as grave as waging war, the law carves out this exception, justified by the extreme danger such preparations pose. The phrase otherwise prepares provides flexibility to include various definite acts of preparation beyond those specifically listed. However, the specific intent to wage war is paramount and must be proven beyond reasonable doubt. The punishment is severe: life imprisonment or up to 10 years, plus a fine.
To understand this better, consider a clandestine group discovered to have amassed a significant cache of illegal firearms and explosives, along with detailed plans for coordinated attacks on government forces, clearly aiming to overthrow regional administration.
Yes,
These are tangible, clearly indicative acts of preparation under Section 149.
absolutely.
Or imagine the active recruitment and paramilitary training of a militia with the explicit stated goal of engaging in armed conflict against the Indian Army. These aren't just vague ideas, they're concrete steps towards war.
Absolutely. This principle is often termed preventive justice, acting early to avert conflict. Case law, often drawn from pre-BNS IPC Section 122, consistently stresses that intention is paramount. Mere possession of arms, for instance, is insufficient. It must be demonstrably linked to the intent of waging war. The nature of preparation must involve tangible, clearly indicative acts, not vague ones, and be for the purpose of war, even if the scale doesn't guarantee success.
Now, what if someone knows about such a plot to wage war but decides to keep it a secret, perhaps actively helping it along through their silence or inaction? That's a different kind of complicity covered in Section 150, concealing with intent to facilitate design to wage war.
This section criminalizes the deliberate concealment of a known design to wage war, especially when that concealment is intended to facilitate or is known to be likely to facilitate the war. The core concept here targets complicity to the suppression of vital information. The object is to deter individuals from passively or actively assisting such a grave offense against the state by withholding information that could lead to its prevention or disruption.
Looking at the essential elements, it applies to whoever. There must be an existing design to wage war against the government of India, and the accused's knowledge of this design is fundamental.
Knowledge is key.
The prohibited act of concealment can be by any act, such as destroying evidence or, significantly, by any illegal omission, implying a legal duty to disclose. The mens rea is key, either intending by such concealment to facilitate the war or knowing it to be likely that such concealment will facilitate it.
This is a specific offense of complicity. The illegal omission part is particularly significant, especially for public servants or those under specific legal duties, where a failure to act is a breach of their responsibility. For ordinary citizens, an act of concealment, such as destroying evidence or actively misdirecting authorities, is more commonly applicable unless a specific legal duty to report can be established. The punishment, up to 10 years imprisonment plus a fine, reflects the seriousness of aiding such design.
To illustrate, picture a scenario where a person discovers secret communications detailing a plot to wage war. Instead of reporting it, they deliberately destroy the evidence or provide false information to investigators, intending to help the plotters evade capture.
That's a clear act of concealment with intent.
Or consider a high-ranking official legally mandated to report national security threats who learns of a credible war design but purposefully withholds this information, allowing the plan to proceed.
That would be an illegal omission with likely knowledge of facilitation. These are classic examples. These actions implicitly underscore a duty to the state, not to aid, even by concealment, acts that threaten its existence. Design to wage war implies a definite and actionable plan, not vague discontent. Proving the intent or knowledge of facilitation is crucial. Mere passive non-disclosure is often insufficient without that specific culpable mens rea or a pre-existing legal duty.
Moving from war and rebellion, let's turn our attention to protecting the very symbols of the state, its highest constitutional offices. Section 151 makes it a serious crime to try and coerce or intimidate the president or a governor.
The core concept here is the paramount protection of the President of India and the governors of states from physical coercion or intimidation, specifically aimed at unlawfully influencing their official decisions. The law's object is to safeguard the dignity, independence, and fearless functioning of these high constitutional offices, ensuring that their lawful powers are exercised freely without external duress.
And the elements are quite specific: whoever targets the president or a governor, The mens rea is a particular intention of inducing or compelling them to exercise or refrain from exercising lawful powers in a specific manner.
Yes, the intent related to their lawful powers.
The actus reus involves coercive acts such as assaulting, wrongfully restraining or attempting to, or overawing them by criminal force or the show of criminal force or attempting to do so.
This is a specific offense providing enhanced legal protection for these high constitutional dignitaries. The focus is strictly on compelling actions related to their lawful powers, those conferred by the Constitution or other statutes. Overawe here implies intimidating or creating a sense of fear sufficient to influence their free will or official discretion. The punishment, up to 7 years imprisonment plus a fine, underscores the importance of shielding these offices from such interference.
For instance, imagine a violent protest staged outside Rashtrapati Bhavan or a Raj Bhavan, where protesters physically block the president or governor from attending an official function with the explicit, declared intent of forcing them to take a particular administrative decision.
Yes, that's a direct attempt to compel through wrongful restraint.
Or consider credible threats of physical harm directed at a governor to compel them to dismiss a state government or sign a specific bill.
That would fall under overawing by show of criminal force. These acts directly undermine constitutional governance. Indeed, the legal maxims here revolve around the integrity and independence of constitutional governance, fundamental to the rule of law, and providing offenses against public functionaries with enhanced protection. Case law from pre-BNS IPC Section 124 emphasizes that specific intent is crucial. Acts of general protest or insult are insufficient. There must be specific coercive intent related to the exercise of official powers. The term overawes signifies more than mere disrespect. It denotes creating sufficient fear to influence the free exercise of their will.
Our next section, 152, Act Endangering Sovereignty, Unity, and Integrity of India, takes on a challenge that feels particularly resonant in our current information age. Acts that threaten the very fabric of India through incitement and subversive activities.
This is a highly significant provision, representing a notable evolution in how the law addresses threats to the nation's core identity. Its core concept is to criminalize acts intended or known to undermine India's sovereignty, unity, and integrity. The law's object here is to provide a strong legal deterrent against conduct, including speech, electronic communication, and financial means that promote secession, armed rebellion, subversive activities, or separatism, thereby safeguarding India's constitutional and territorial integrity against both traditional and modern forms of attack.
And the scope of this is intentionally broad, reflecting contemporary threats. It applies to whoever acts purposely or knowingly through diverse means, words, spoken or written, signs, visible representation, electronic communication, or by use of financial means or otherwise.
The inclusion of electronic communication and financial means is key here.
Exactly. The prohibited acts are extensive. Exciting or attempting to excite secession, armed rebellion, subversive activities, encouraging separatist feelings, or endangering the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. The punishment is severe, life imprisonment or up to 7 years, plus a fine. Now, there's a crucial saving clause, an explanation that addresses a sensitive point. Legitimate comments expressing disapprobation of government measures or actions aimed at lawful alteration are not an offense.
Yes, that's the balancing act.
This is the critical balance point between protecting state security and upholding fundamental freedoms, particularly freedom of speech. How does this compare to earlier sedition laws?
This is where the evolution is most evident. While reminiscent to the repealed Section 124A of the IPC sedition, Section 152 in the BNS aims for greater specificity and perhaps a higher threshold for criminality. The old sedition law often faced criticism for its perceived vagueness. Section 152 broadens the scope to explicitly include subversive activities and recognizes the digital battleground by mentioning electronic communication and financial means.
So it's adapting to modern threats.
Precisely. This means it's not just about inciting physical violence or public disorder anymore, but actively chipping away at the nation's foundations through modern methods, such as online propaganda or covert funding of separatist movements. This provision aims to address threats that use the internet and financial networks to destabilize the state, which were less explicitly covered before.
So analogous scenarios would include public calls for the armed overthrow of the government disseminated online, or organizations using encrypted platforms and illicit funding to actively promote the secession of a territory from India.
Yes, those fit the description.
We could also consider the widespread dissemination of material that purposefully endangers India's unity by encouraging deep-seated animosity between different regions, explicitly with a separatist agenda.
The legal maxims here grapple intensely with state security and public order, and the delicate balance between freedom of speech under Article 19.1 and reasonable restrictions under Article 19.2 of the Constitution. Historically, as established in Kedarnath Singh v. State of Bihar, speech had to incite violence or public disorder to be deemed seditious. Section 152's wording, excites or attempts to excite, armed rebellion, or endangers the sovereignty, unity, and integrity, suggests a similar high threshold, requiring a direct link to actual harm or incitement.
So the interpretation will be key.
Absolutely. Judicial interpretation will be crucial for terms like subversive activities to prevent vague or arbitrary application, and the mens rea of purposely or knowingly will be critical for the prosecution to prove. This complex interplay between state security and fundamental rights sets the stage for our next set of provisions, which expand the scope of protection beyond our borders, considering India's relations with other nations.
We continue our deep dive within Chapter 7 as these sections expand the scope of national security to include India's international relations and the secure custody of specific high-risk prisoners. It's about how the law projects India's values beyond its immediate borders.
Indeed. Let's first examine Section 153, waging war against government of any foreign state at peace with government of India. The core concept is to prevent individuals or groups within India from engaging in hostile acts against foreign states that are at peace with India. This upholds India's international obligations, maintaining peaceful diplomatic relations and preventing Indian territory from being used as a launchpad for attacks against friendly nations, thereby preserving international comity.
The basic ingredients are structured quite similarly to Section 147. It covers waging, attempting, or abetting such war.
Yes, the structure is familiar.
However, the critical condition, and this is key, is that the foreign state must be at peace with the government of India. This is not about supporting an ally in a conflict, but about preventing unauthorized private warfare against a friendly nation.
That distinction is crucial. This provision reflects India's commitment to international law and its role as a responsible global actor, preventing its territory from becoming a base for private military expeditions. The punishment is notably flexible, ranging from a fine only to up to 7 years, or even life imprisonment.
That's quite a range.
It allows courts to match the sentence to the gravity and diplomatic implications of the specific act, demonstrating the law's nuanced approach.
So imagine a scenario where a group in India plots and sends armed individuals across the border to a friendly neighboring country to overthrow its government.
That would clearly fall under this section.
Or an individual in India provides funds and arms to a rebel group known to be fighting against a friendly foreign government.
Yes, abetting war against a state at peace with India. These acts, undermining India's peaceful foreign relations, would fall squarely under Section 153. The legal principles here are rooted in international comity, the mutual respect for the sovereignty of other nations, and analogous to neutrality laws that prevent a nation's territory from being used for hostile acts. Crucially, the prosecution must establish that the foreign state is at peace with India, typically ascertained from official government statements or treaties. The criteria for waging war against a foreign state would generally be similar to those under Section 147, but directed against a friendly foreign entity.
Beyond full-scale war, what about smaller acts of aggression against friendly nations, like cross-border raids for plunder? That's where Section 154, committing depredation on territories of foreign state at peace with government of India, comes in.
This section specifically punishes acts of plunder or raids launched from India against friendly foreign territories. The core concept is to maintain peaceful relations and protect the territorial integrity of our neighbors from lawless incursions. It's about preventing Indian territory from being used as a staging ground for acts of banditry or piracy against a friendly state.
It's quite comprehensive, covering both actually committing depredation, which signifies plundering or raiding, and even preparing to commit it.
Right, the preparation aspect is significant.
Again, the target must be territories of any foreign state at peace with the government of India.
That criminalization of preparation is a unique and significant feature here, enabling early intervention. It also includes the forfeiture of property used in or acquired through depredation, adding a strong financial deterrent.
So hitting them in the pocket, too.
Exactly. The punishment is up to 7 years, a fine and, importantly, forfeiture of the illicit gains. For instance, if a group gathers weapons and equipment on the Indian side of a border with a friendly nation, clearly intending and preparing to cross over and raid villages for valuables, that would constitute preparation to commit depredation.
Okay.
Or imagine individuals making repeated incursions into a friendly state to illegally log timber or poach wildlife on a large commercial scale, returning with the illicit goods to India.
And if property is taken from a friendly country through such acts, what happens to those who knowingly receive it here in India? Section 155. Receiving property taken by war or depredation mentioned in sections 153 and 154 closes that legal loop.
This section penalizes those who knowingly benefit from property obtained through acts under sections 153 or 154. Its core concept is to discourage these primary offenses by making it harder to profit from looted goods, thereby indirectly deterring the war or depredation itself. It's a clear signal that India will not be a haven for such illicit gains.
The basic ingredient is straightforward. Whoever receives any property knowing it was taken during the commission of offenses under sections 153 or 154, this guilty knowledge is paramount.
This is analogous to the offense of receiving stolen property, but specifically scaled to an international context. Knowledge is absolutely key for conviction. It also includes the forfeiture of the received property, in addition to imprisonment of up to 7 years and a fine. For example, if valuable artifacts plundered from a friendly foreign town during a raid are brought into India, and an individual knowingly buys them at a suspiciously low price, they would be liable under Section 155.
Moving now from international relations to internal security, specifically the secure custody of certain high-risk prisoners. Sections 156 and 157 differentiate between intentionally and negligently allowing an escape.
Section 156. Public servant voluntarily allowing prisoner of state or war to escape holds public servants accountable for intentionally permitting the escape of what are termed state prisoners or prisoners of war. These aren't just any prisoners. State prisoners are individuals detained for reasons of national security, often those involved in deeply subversive or anti-state activities. Their escape poses a direct threat to the nation's stability. Prisoners of war are, of course, under international conventions.
So these are high-stakes individuals.
Exactly. The object here is to ensure their secure detention and to punish severe dereliction of duty by those entrusted with their custody.
The elements are precise. The accused must be a public servant having lawful custody of a state prisoner or prisoner of war, and they must voluntarily allow such a prisoner to escape. Voluntarily here implies a clear intention or knowledge on the part of the public servant.
This constitutes a grave breach of public duty, a severe betrayal of trust. The severe punishment, life imprisonment, or up to 10 years, plus a fine highlights the extreme seriousness of such an act. Picture a prison guard deliberately leaving a cell door unlocked for a detained secessionist leader to escape in exchange for a bribe, or an army officer intentionally ignoring a known prisoner of war's escape attempt. These are direct threats to national security.
Now, Section 157, public servant negligently suffering such prisoner to escape, addresses a similar but distinct scenario, a less culpable form of the same failure.
This section penalizes negligence by a public servant that leads to the escape of state prisoners or prisoners of war. The object is to ensure due care and diligence in their custody, even if the conduct doesn't amount to intentional facilitation. It recognizes that even unintentional lapses can have severe national security implications.
So the elements are similar regarding the accused and the type of prisoner, but the actus reus and mens rea shift. The public servant negligently suffers the escape. This implies a significant breach of their duty of care falling short of intent.
Exactly. This is based on criminal negligence, a lower threshold of culpability than Section 156. The punishment is accordingly less severe. Simple imprisonment up to 3 years, plus a fine, reflecting that differing mens rea. An example would be a prison guard negligently leaving cell keys accessible in an unsecured area, which an inmate then uses to facilitate the escape of a state prisoner, but without the guard having any intention for it to happen.
So if the public servant is responsible for the escape, what about civilians or others who help these high-security prisoners escape or evade capture? Section 158. Aiding escape of rescuing or harboring such prisoner covers a whole range of actions.
This section penalizes any act that facilitates the escape, prevents recapture, or assists an escaped state prisoner or prisoner of war. The core concept is to deter interference with lawful custody and to ensure that those who aid their escape or obstruct their recapture are severely punished. It casts a wide net to prevent any form of complicity.
The elements are broad. Whoever acting knowingly for aiding, assisting, or harboring. It covers various acts. aiding escape, rescuing or attempting to rescue, harboring or concealing an escaped prisoner, or offering or attempting to offer resistance to recapture.
A very comprehensive list.
And there's an important explanation here. Exceeding parole limits actually constitutes escape from lawful custody.
That's a crucial clarification, extending the scope beyond physical breakout. This is a comprehensive list of prohibited acts with severe punishment, life imprisonment, or up to 10 years, plus a fine. The legal maxims here emphasize that knowingly means the accused must be aware of the prisoner's status. Rescues implies the use of force or stratagem to remove from custody, and harbors or conceals involves providing shelter, food, money, or hiding an individual to prevent their apprehension. From protecting our borders and high-risk prisoners, we now turn our attention to the internal discipline and loyalty of our armed forces, a cornerstone of national security, covered in Chapter 8.
Chapter 8 specifically addresses acts that can undermine the very discipline and loyalty of India's Army, Navy, and Air Force. This is absolutely crucial for national defense, as a disciplined force is the ultimate guarantor of national security. We'll explore how the law deals with everything from mutiny to impersonation.
Let's begin with Section 159, abetting mutiny or attempting to seduce a soldier, sailor, or airman from his duty. This section protects the absolute discipline, loyalty, and operational integrity of the armed forces by penalizing acts that incite mutiny, a collective rebellion, or attempt to subvert the allegiance or duty of individual personnel. It's fundamentally about safeguarding national security by preserving the chain of command and the unwavering commitment of service members.
The elements clarify two distinct offenses here. It targets whoever either abets the committing of mutiny by an officer, soldier, sailor, or airman,
That's the collective part.
or attempts to seduce any such officer, soldier, sailor, or airman from his allegiance or his duty.
And that's the individual subversion. These are two critical forms of undermining military authority. This is a grave offense with serious penalties, life imprisonment or up to 10 years, plus a fine. It comprehensively covers both collective incitement to rebellion and individual attempts to subvert loyalty. For instance, distributing pamphlets among soldiers, urging them to refuse lawful orders and take up arms against the government would be abetting mutiny.
Okay, clear incitement.
Attempting to persuade an airman to leak sensitive military information or to desert their post would constitute seduction from duty. The legal maxims here underline the supreme importance of military discipline and national security, treating such offenses with extreme severity, defining mutiny as collective insubordination and seduce from allegiance or duty as luring personnel to betray their loyalty or fail in their prescribed duties.
And what if that abetment of mutiny actually works? Section 160. Abetment of mutiny, if mutiny is committed in consequence thereof, imposes even harsher penalties.
This section provides for significantly enhanced punishment, including the possibility of death, if abetment of mutiny actually leads to mutiny. It reflects the extreme gravity of successful incitement to rebellion within the armed forces, escalating the legal consequences when the ultimate harm materializes. The crucial ingredient here is the direct causal link. Mutiny must be committed in consequence of that abetment.
And that causal link, the direct result of the abetment, is what elevates the crime and its consequences so dramatically.
Precisely. It's an aggravated form of abetment, and the death penalty option underscores the extreme severity with which successful incitement to armed rebellion within the forces is viewed, reflecting the potential catastrophic impact on national security.
Beyond full-scale mutiny, even inciting an assault on a superior officer is a serious breach of military discipline. Section 161. Abetment of assault by soldier, sailor, or airman on his superior officer when in execution of his office covers the abetment.
Yes, the incitement itself.
While Section 162. Abetment of such assault, if assault committed, addresses the completed act.
Section 161 punishes the incitement or aiding of insubordination in the form of an assault on a superior officer who is engaged in their duties. Its core concept is to maintain discipline and the chain of command, which is non-negotiable in military structures. The abetment itself is the offense, even if the assault doesn't happen, with a punishment up to 3 years and a fine. Section 162 then provides for a higher punishment if the abetted assault is actually committed. This reflects the greater harm and breach of discipline when the incited act is completed. Again, a clear causal link between the abetment and the assault is essential, and the punishment increases to up to 7 years plus a fine.
What about trying to get soldiers to simply abandon their posts? That's desertion in Section 163. Abetment of desertion of soldier, sailor, or airman punishes those who abet it,
Yeah.
while Section 164. Harboring deserter covers those who help them hide.
Section 163 penalizes encouraging, inciting, aiding, or facilitating desertion by armed forces personnel. Its core concept is to maintain the strength, discipline, and readiness of the armed forces. It's a substantive offense, irrespective of whether the desertion actually occurs, with a punishment of up to 2 years, a fine, or both. This relatively moderate punishment often targets external abettors, as military law typically handles the deserter themselves more strictly. Then Section 164 penalizes providing shelter or assistance to a known deserter, thereby obstructing their apprehension. Its object is to deter civilians from aiding deserters and to facilitate their recapture. The whoever here is broad, but notably it includes a surprising spousal exception, except the spouse of the deserter.
That is quite something.
It is. This immunity recognizes marital obligations and affections, a humane touch in what is otherwise a very strict legal framework. The accused must know or have reason to believe the person is a deserter and harbors them. Harbor is broadly defined to include providing food, money, clothes, conveyance, or shelter. Knowledge, of course, is crucial, and the punishment is up to 2 years, a fine, or both.
That spousal exception truly is a fascinating detail, acknowledging a fundamental human bond even within the confines of military law. Now, what if a deserter is found on a merchant vessel, not intentionally hidden, but due to someone's negligence? Section 165, deserter concealed on board merchant vessel through negligence of master, addresses that.
This section imposes responsibility on merchant vessel masters to prevent their ships from being used for deserter escape or concealment. It's about enlisting maritime cooperation and national security. It covers the master or person in charge where a deserter is concealed on board, and liability arises even if they were ignorant of the concealment, if it occurred due to neglect of duty or lack of discipline.
So negligence is enough here?
Yes, this is a negligence-based liability, not intentional. The penalty is monetary, only up to $3,000, reflecting the lower culpability compared to intentional aiding. The phrase "might have known" implies constructive knowledge and a standard of reasonable diligence from the master.
We've covered mutiny and desertion. What about other forms of disobedience? Section 166, abetment of active insubordination by soldier, sailor, or airman deals with abetting insubordination. And then, a crucial jurisdictional point, Section 167, persons subject to certain acts.
Section 166 punishes the successful incitement or aiding of insubordination, a defiance of lawful military authority. Its core concept is to maintain discipline and the command structure. The abettor must know the act is insubordination, and the act must actually be committed in consequence of that abetment. Knowledge of insubordination is key, and the punishment is up to 2 years, a fine, or both. Now, Section 167 is a pivotal saving clause. It establishes the primacy of specific service acts, the Air Force Act, Army Act, and Navy Act, for armed forces personnel for offenses defined within Chapter 8 of BNS. Its core concept is to avoid jurisdictional conflicts and ensure military personnel are primarily governed by courts-martial for service-related offenses in this chapter. So military law takes precedence for these specific offenses. Precisely. The clause clearly states that persons subject to these military acts shall not be subject to punishment under BNS for offenses defined in Chapter 8.
So if I'm understanding correctly, this means military personnel committing these specific Chapter 8 offenses will primarily face their own internal military justice system, like a court-martial, rather than being tried under the BNS in civilian courts.
That's the exact distinction.
However, civilians who abet these acts would still be triable under the BNS.
That's right. It ensures military discipline is maintained through specialized tribunals. Finally, in a less serious but still important vein for military dignity, what about someone simply pretending to be a soldier? Section 168. Wearing garb or carrying token used by soldier, sailor, or airman addresses impersonation.
This section penalizes fraudulent impersonation of military personnel. The core concept is to protect the dignity and authority of the uniform and insignia, prevent fraud, and safeguard national security from individuals falsely claiming military affiliation.
It applies to whoever who is explicitly not a soldier, sailor, or airman, who wears any garb or carries any token resembling any garb or token used by such military personnel. The mens rea is a specific intention, that it may be believed that he is such a soldier, sailor, or airman. The focus is squarely on the intent to deceive.
Intent is key.
Absolutely. The punishment here is relatively low, up to 3 months imprisonment or a fine up to $2,000 or both. This indicates it's seen more as an offense against military dignity and minor fraud, rather than high treason, yet it's important for maintaining public trust. From safeguarding the nation's armed might and its symbols, we move to protecting another fundamental pillar of our democracy, the integrity of our elections. Chapter 9 delves into a range of electoral offenses.
Elections are truly the heartbeat of democracy, the mechanism through which the will of the people finds expression. Chapter 9 of the BNS lays down specific offenses designed to ensure fairness, prevent corruption, and uphold the free will of voters. This section, of course, draws heavily from existing jurisprudence under the Indian Penal Code and the Representation of the People Act. It's about preserving the sanctity of the ballot box.
Indeed. We begin with Section 169, Candidate, Electoral Right Defined. This provides precise definitions for candidate and electoral right, specifically for this chapter. Its core concept is to ensure clarity and consistency in applying the subsequent electoral offenses, establishing the scope of these protections.
So, for the purposes of this chapter, a candidate is defined as a person who has been nominated at an election.
Simple enough.
And an electoral right is broadly defined to include the right to stand or not to stand as, or to withdraw from being a candidate, or crucially, to vote or refrain from voting at an election. This definition captures the full spectrum of a citizen's electoral autonomy.
These are foundational definitions. The scope is carefully limited to this chapter, ensuring that when an offense refers to, say, an electoral right, we know exactly what it entails. This inclusive definition, covering both positive and negative acts, is vital for capturing various forms of interference with electoral choices. For instance, if X is officially nominated, X becomes a candidate. If a person is threatened not to vote, that's an interference with their electoral right.
Makes sense.
Or if someone is bribed to withdraw their nomination, it directly affects their electoral right to stand or withdraw.
With those definitions clear, let's dive into one of the most common and damaging electoral crimes. Bribery, covered by Section 170. Bribery, electoral offense, with its punishment detailed in Section 173.
The core concept of Section 170 is that giving or accepting gratification as an inducement or reward for exercising an electoral right constitutes bribery. Its object is paramount: to preserve the purity and fairness of the democratic process by preventing corrupt influences from distorting electoral choices, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the public will.
The elements for bribery involve whoever either gives a gratification to any person to induce them to exercise an electoral right or rewards them for having done so.
Right, the giving side.
Conversely, it's also bribery if whoever accepts gratification for themselves or another as a reward for exercising such a right or for inducing another.
And the accepting side.
The deeming provisions in subsections 2 and 3 are quite broad, expanding giving to include offering or attempting to procure, and accepting to include obtaining or agreeing to accept. Notably, even accepting for an act not intended or done is deemed acceptance as a reward.
So it covers attempts and agreements, too.
However, there's a crucial proviso, a safeguard for legitimate political activity. A declaration of public policy or a promise of public action shall not be considered an offense. This is essential to distinguish legitimate political promises from corrupt inducements.
That proviso is indeed vital for maintaining the robustness of free political speech. Gratification itself is not explicitly defined in BNS, but is broadly understood in anti-corruption jurisprudence to include anything of value, not just money.
So it could be anything valuable.
Pretty much anything. The law covers both inducement before an act and reward after an act. For example, a candidate offering cash directly for votes is clear bribery. A person accepting money for not contesting an election is also bribery. But a candidate promising to build a new community hospital if elected, while an inducement, is generally a protected policy promise, distinct from offering cash to individual voters for their vote. The legal maxims here revolve around the purity of elections, and courts, when interpreting analogous provisions like pre-BNS IPC 171B, have consistently interpreted gratification broadly beyond mere monetary considerations.
As for punishment under Section 173, the general penalty for bribery is up to 1 year imprisonment or a fine or both. But there's a specific proviso for treating bribery where the gratification consists solely of food, drink, entertainment, or provision.
Yes, treating is punished with fine only. This legislative recognition of a different, albeit still corrupt, level of severity is noteworthy. While still a corrupt practice, it attracts a lesser penalty than direct monetary bribery, perhaps acknowledging historical nuances of social engagement in political campaigns, though the corrupt intent remains culpable.
Bribery is about inducements, but what about pressure? That's undue influence. and Section 171 defines it with its punishment in Section 174.
The core concept of Section 171 is any voluntary interference or attempted interference with the free exercise of any electoral right. Its paramount object is to ensure voters and candidates act without coercion, intimidation, or manipulative pressure. It fundamentally safeguards their autonomy and the integrity of their choices.
It has a general definition of voluntary interference, but also specifies deemed interferences in subsection 2. These include threats of injury of any kind to body, mind, reputation, or property against a candidate, voter, or their loved ones.
So physical or reputational harm.
And fascinatingly, it explicitly includes inducing or attempting to induce a candidate or voter to believe they or someone they are interested in will face divine displeasure or spiritual censure, such as religious threats or excommunication.
Ah, the spiritual angle too, that's significant.
Again, similar to bribery, public policy declarations, promises of public action, or the mere exercise of a legal right without intent to interfere are explicitly excluded.
This section broadly covers a wide range of pressures, including physical, reputational, financial, and indeed spiritual threats. The terms voluntary and attempts are key elements, meaning the mere attempted interference is sufficient. For instance, a landlord threatening eviction if tenants don't vote for a specific candidate is a clear example. Or a religious leader declaring divine wrath or social ostracism for voting for a certain party or candidate. These are explicit forms of undue influence recognized by the law. The legal maxims here emphasize freedom of electoral choice. Case law, such as Ramdial v. St. Lal dealing with pre-BNS IPC 171C, has historically affirmed the recognition of spiritual undue influence by courts.
And under Section 174, the punishment for undue influence is the same as for general bribery, up to 1 year imprisonment, or a fine, or both. Besides coercion, another major threat to election integrity is simply pretending to be someone else to cast a vote. Section 172 tackles personation, with its punishment also in Section 174.
The core concept of Section 172 is to criminalize falsely representing oneself as another elector, whether living, dead, or fictitious, or voting multiple times. Its paramount object is to prevent electoral fraud and uphold the fundamental principle of one person, one vote, ensuring that each ballot cast genuinely represents a single voter.
The section outlines various ways personation can be committed: applying for a voting paper or voting in another's name, or having voted once, applying again for a voting paper in one's own name.
Double voting.
Right, double voting. It also covers abetting, procuring, or attempting to procure such fraudulent voting. There's a proviso, though, that lawfully authorized proxy voting is explicitly excluded from this definition.
This is crucial for maintaining the accuracy of electoral rolls and the genuineness of votes. For example, a person attempting to vote using a deceased relative's ID, or an individual voting twice, or a political worker providing fake IDs to vote in absent persons' names. The legal principle is that the act of applying for a voting paper with fraudulent intent is often enough, and proof of that fraudulent intent is crucial for a conviction. This ensures that even attempts to subvert the one person, one vote principle are caught.
And as we mentioned, Section 174 prescribes the same punishment for personation as for undue influence, up to 1 year or a fine or both. Beyond direct fraud or influence, elections can also be manipulated through lies. Section 175, false statement in connection with an election, deals with false statements about candidates.
The core concept here is to criminalize the deliberate dissemination of false facts about a candidate's personal character or conduct with the specific intent to manipulate election results. Its object is to promote decency in political campaigns, protect candidates from malicious personal attacks, and enable informed voter choice, free from intentional falsehoods about personal integrity.
The elements are very specific. Whoever acts with intent to affect the result of an election and makes or publishes any statement purporting to be a statement of fact which is false, and which he either knows or believes to be false or does not believe to be true.
That knowledge or belief element is crucial.
Critically, the statement must be in relation to the personal character or conduct of any candidate. It's not about policy.
This provision distinctly focuses on personal character, not general policy criticism or political opinions. It requires a high level of culpability regarding truthfulness, demanding proof that the statement was known or believed to be false. Analogous scenarios would be knowingly publishing fabricated allegations about a candidate's private life, their financial integrity, or past personal conduct to sway voters. While similar to defamation, this is a specific electoral offense. The punishment is fine only. a key distinction from other electoral offenses, indicating a legislative intent to penalize, but perhaps not to the same severity as direct bribery or coercion.
Finally, let's talk about money. Sections 176 and 177 regulate election spending to ensure transparency and accountability.
Section 176, titled Illegal Payments in Connection with an Election, regulates election expenditure by requiring written authorization for expenses incurred by non-candidates for promoting a candidate. Its core concept is to ensure transparency and prevent the circumvention of official spending limits, thereby leveling the playing field.
So stopping hidden funding.
Essentially, yes. Whoever, a non-candidate or unauthorized person, incurs or authorizes expenses for public meetings, advertisements, publications, or in any other way whatsoever to promote a candidate without their general or special authority in writing is liable. There's a proviso. Small expenses, up to €10, can be ratified with written approval within 10 days, acknowledging minor, spontaneous support. The punishment for violation is a fine up to £10,000. Complementing this, Section 177, Failure to Keep Election Accounts, enforces the legal requirement to maintain proper election expense accounts. Its core concept is to promote transparency, accountability, and curb illicit money in elections.
Making sure the books are straight.
Exactly. Whoever is required by law or rule to keep such accounts and fails to keep such accounts is liable. This is a regulatory offense, often linked to other electoral laws, like the Representation of the People Act, ensuring the financial aspects of campaigning are auditable. The punishment is a fine up to 5,000 hosens. From protecting the purity of elections, we now pivot to safeguarding the very symbols of economic trust and state revenue, our currency, coins, and government stamps. Chapter X addresses these critical economic offenses, which are fundamental to a nation's financial stability.
This chapter is all about protecting the nation's economic integrity. Counterfeiting and fraud related to money and stamps can destabilize an economy, erode public trust, and undermine state revenue. These sections carry serious penalties, reflecting the severe and widespread impact of such crimes.
Let's dive into Section 178. Counterfeiting coin, government stamps, currency notes, or banknotes. Its core concept is to criminalize the creation of false coins, government revenue stamps, currency notes or banknotes, or knowingly participating in any part of this counterfeiting process. This comprehensively protects economic stability, maintains public confidence in financial instruments, and prevents large-scale fraud that could undermine national financial systems.
The elements are comprehensive. Whoever counterfeits or knowingly performs any part of the counterfeiting process, any coin, government revenue stamp, currency note, or banknote. The explanations within the section are crucial, providing precise definitions. Banknote.
A promissory note from a bank or state.
Coin.
Metal used as money, stamped by the state.
Counterfeiting government stamp.
Altering the denomination of a genuine stamp.
And counterfeiting coin.
Altering a genuine coin, maybe reducing its weight or composition. These definitions clarify the broad scope of the offense. This is a grave economic offense with profound consequences, hence the severe penalties. Life imprisonment or up to 10 years, plus a fine. Even partial participation in the process is an offense, reflecting the law's intent to disrupt counterfeiting operations at every stage.
So just being involved in one part is enough.
Yes. For example, setting up a sophisticated printing press solely for fake Euro 500 notes, or meticulously altering 10 stamps to deceptively resemble 100 stamps, or shaving metal from genuine coins to reduce their intrinsic value while passing them off as original, all fall under this section. The legal principles here emphasize the widespread repercussions of economic offenses and the state's exclusive prerogative in issuing currency and stamps. The inherent intention to deceive is central, as defined broadly in BNS Section 2.4 regarding counterfeit.
If someone makes fake money, then others try to put it into circulation. Section 179. Using as genuine, forged, or counterfeit coin, government stamp, currency notes, or banknotes covers, using or trafficking these counterfeits.
This section targets the critical next stage, the circulation and use of counterfeit financial instruments and stamps. Its core concept is to disrupt the distribution networks and prevent counterfeit items from entering legitimate public circulation, thereby protecting the economy and unsuspecting individuals from financial loss.
Whoever imports or exports, sells or delivers, buys or receives, traffics or uses as genuine any forged or counterfeit item from Section 178, knowing or having reason to believe it's forged or counterfeit, is liable. The reason to believe clause here broadens the net to capture those who deliberately ignore obvious signs of fraud.
This section covers a wide range of activities associated with putting fakes into the economy. Reason to believe is a crucial standard, implying that a person had sufficient cause to believe the item was counterfeit, even if they deny explicit knowledge. The penalties are severe: life imprisonment or up to 10 years plus a fine, matching the gravity of the manufacturing offense.
Same penalty as making them.
Yes.
No.
An example would be knowingly using a counterfeit 2000 note to pay for goods, or systematically selling a bundle of fake currency. Or even an individual who receives a fake note realizes it's fake due to its feel or appearance, but then deliberately passes it to an unsuspecting shopkeeper. Case law, like Umashankar v. State of Chhattisgarh, under pre-BNS IPC 239-489b, consistently emphasizes that proof of knowing or having reason to believe can be inferred from circumstances such as the quantity involved, the manner of the transaction, or clear discrepancies in the item's appearance.
But what if you just have fake money, not yet used, but knowing it's fake and planning to use it? Section 180. Possession of forged or counterfeit coin, government stamp, currency notes, or banknotes addresses that culpable possession.
This section's core concept is that possession of counterfeit items becomes an offense when coupled with explicit knowledge of their fake nature and a clear intent to use them fraudulently. It's designed to prevent circulation before actual use, acting as an intervention point for law enforcement.
So, whoever has in his possession any forged or counterfeit item, knowing or having reason to believe it's fake, and crucially, intending to use the same as genuine or that it may be used as genuine, is liable.
Both knowledge and intent are needed.
There's an important explanation. It's not an offense if possession is from a lawful source, for example, innocently received, and without any intent to circulate or use it fraudulently.
This dual mens rea rerum knowledge of falsity and intent to use as genuine is key. The punishment is up to 7 years, or a fine, or both, a lower maximum than Section 179, reflecting the legal distinction between mere possession with intent and actual circulation.
So, less severe than actually using it.
Right. For example, if police find a large stash of fake currency in someone's home, along with evidence of their intent to introduce it into the market, or a person receives a fake coin, realizes it's fake, but deliberately keeps it with the intention of trying to use it later. Case law, like M. Mammootty v. State of Karnataka, under pre-BNS IPC 489C, consistently highlights that proof of intent to use as genuine is crucial and often inferred from the quantity, the circumstances of possession, or attempts at concealment.
To truly stop counterfeiting, you often have to go further upstream to the people making the tools and materials. Section 181. Making or possessing instruments or materials for forging or counterfeiting coin, government stamp, currency notes, or banknotes hits at the very means of production.
This section penalizes the creation, acquisition, or possession of tools and materials specifically designed for counterfeiting. Its core concept is to strike at the root of such operations, preventing manufacture by criminalizing the preparatory stages. This is a critical preventive measure against large-scale economic crime.
Whoever makes or mends, buys or sells, disposes of, or possesses any machinery, die, instrument, or material for the purpose of being used for counterfeiting, or knowing or having reason to believe that it is intended to be used for counterfeiting, is liable. This broad phrasing covers anyone involved in the supply chain of counterfeiting tools.
This is a serious offense targeting preparatory stages, making it a key exception to the general rule about non-punishability of mere preparation, justified by the grave nature of the ultimate crime and its widespread economic impact. The penalties are severe: life imprisonment or up to 10 years, plus a fine.
Same as making the fakes themselves.
Yes, reflecting the danger. For instance, a clandestine workshop discovered manufacturing high-quality printing plates for currency or the possession of specialized paper and inks used exclusively for security documents, with clear evidence linking them to known counterfeiters.
What about documents that look like currency but aren't perfect fakes, yet could still deceive? Section 182. Making or using documents resembling currency notes or banknotes deals with these lookalikes.
This section penalizes the creation or use of documents that resemble currency or banknotes and are calculated to deceive, even if they are not high-quality forgeries. Its object is to prevent public confusion and minor frauds, especially when such documents are passed off to unsuspecting individuals.
Whoever makes, causes to be made, uses, or delivers any document purporting to be or in any way resembling or so nearly resembling as to be calculated to deceive any currency or banknote is punished with a fine up to $300.
A very small fine.
There are also provisions for a higher fine if someone whose name appears on such a document refuses to disclose the printer's information, and a presumption that the person whose name appears caused the document to be made until proven otherwise.
This is typically treated as a minor regulatory offense, focusing on the deceptive similarity rather than sophisticated forgery. The very low penalties reflect this distinction. Examples would include advertisements designed to mimic currency or realistic play money that could be mistaken for genuine currency in dim light or by the unwary.
Now shifting to another area of government revenue, stamps. Sections 183 to 185 deal with fraudulent manipulation and reuse of government revenue stamps, and Section 186 addresses fictitious stamps. These sections collectively safeguard government revenue by preventing various forms of stamp fraud.
These sections are critical for maintaining the integrity of government revenue. Section 183 penalizes the fraudulent effacing of writing from a substance bearing a government stamp or removing a used stamp from a document with intent to cause loss to the government, essentially making a used stamp appear unused for illicit reuse.
So cleaning up old stamps.
Basically, yes. Then, Section 184 penalizes knowingly and fraudulently using a previously used government revenue stamp with intent to cause loss to the government, deterring direct stamp reuse. And Section 185 criminalizes tampering with revenue stamps by erasing marks denoting use and knowingly possessing or dealing in such altered or used stamps, preventing them from being passed off as new. The punishments for these range from fines to up to 3 years imprisonment, reflecting their seriousness in undermining state revenue. Section 186 then specifically targets fictitious stamps, prohibiting the creation, use, possession, or dealing in stamps that imitate genuine postage stamps.
Postage stamps specifically here.
Yes, this one's about postal revenue. Its core concept is to protect postal revenues and prevent fraud on the postal system. This includes making, knowingly uttering, dealing in, selling, using for postal purposes, or possessing, without lawful excuse, fictitious stamps, or making possessing tools for them. It's a regulatory offense with a small fine, up to $200, and allows for forfeiture. A fictitious stamp is broadly defined as anything falsely purporting to be a government-issued postage stamp or any facsimile. Crucially for postal stamps, government here extends to executive authorities in any part of India or foreign countries, recognizing the international nature of postal services.
Finally, 2 sections deal with the integrity of the minting process itself, errors by mint employees, and unauthorized removal of coining tools.
Section 187. Person employed in mint causing coin to be of different weight or composition from that fixed by law penalizes breaches of trust by mint employees who deliberately alter the legal standards of coins. Its core concept is to ensure the integrity and uniformity of coins, maintaining public confidence in the currency.
Protecting the coin standards from the inside.
Exactly. This applies to a person employed in any mint lawfully established in India, who, by act or illegal omission, with the specific intention of causing any coin to be of a different weight or composition from fixed by law, is liable for up to 7 years, plus a fine. Specific intent to cause this deviation is required here. And lastly, Section 188. Unlawfully taking coining instrument from mint. This section's core concept is to prevent invaluable coining tools from falling into unauthorized hands, where they could be used for counterfeiting. It directly protects the security of the minting process.
Keeping the tools secure.
Right. Whoever, without lawful authority, takes out of any lawfully established mint any coining tool or instrument is liable. The focus is on the unlawful removal itself, and subsequent intent for use is not an explicit ingredient for this particular offense, as the act of removal is deemed dangerous enough. Punishment is up to 7 years, plus a fine.
We've just journeyed through a remarkable and comprehensive landscape of legal provisions within the Bhartiya Nyaya Sanhita. From confronting grave offenses against the state's very existence, to the meticulous protections for our elections, our currency, and the steadfast armed forces, it truly paints a vivid picture of how the law acts as the ultimate guardian of a nation.
And what's truly fascinating here, if we connect the dots, is how deeply interconnected these legal frameworks are. Each section, whether dealing with waging war, ensuring electoral purity, or preventing the printing of fake currency, ultimately aims to secure the trust, stability, and sovereignty of the Indian state. We've seen a consistent emphasis on mens rea, the guilty mind, and the varying degrees of culpability, from direct intent to negligence, and even the crucial criminalization of preparatory acts for the most serious threats.
That preparation point came up quite a bit.
It did for the gravest offenses. The BNS 2023, while a new framework, clearly builds on a rich history of legal thought, adapting it with precision for modern challenges, including the pervasive influence of electronic communication and financial means of subversion.
For you, our engaged learner, understanding these provisions isn't just about knowing the letter of the law, It's about recognizing the incredible thought and intention behind safeguarding the nation you live in, the democratic processes you participate in, and the economic instruments you rely on every day. It's about appreciating the constant, delicate balance the law strikes between ensuring individual freedoms and protecting collective security, a balance that is constantly being debated and refined.
As we conclude, consider this provocative thought. In an increasingly interconnected and digitally driven world, where does the nuanced line between protected free speech and acts that endanger the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India truly lie, especially when using electronic communication or financial means to disseminate ideas? And how will our courts continue to interpret these vital, evolving provisions to rigorously balance national security with the fundamental rights that define our democracy?
That's a huge question for the future.
It's a profound culture that invites ongoing critical thought and deep informed engagement with our evolving legal landscape.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Bhartiya Nyaya Sanhita. We hope it's offered you not just information, but a richer understanding of the intricate legal pillars that uphold our nation. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.